The next lesson that starts on page 5 is about equations with vertical angles and linear pairs. To refresh your memory, vertical angles are formed when you have an x set up, and they're the angles that are opposite each other. Vertical angles are equal to each other, so when we see vertical angles, we'll set up blank equals blank. Linear pairs are two angles that together form a line. If you remember, a line is 180 degrees, so if we have two angles that form a line, we would add the two angles together, and that's going to be equal to 180 then. So we'll use the setup blank plus blank equals 180. First thing we'll be doing is looking to see, are we talking about vertical angles, or are we talking about a linear pair? In the first example, I see the x set up, and I notice my angles are opposite each other. So these are vertical angles. We're going to just shorten that to VERT. Vertical angles have the setup blank equals blank. So we're going to have 2x plus 4 equals 100. So we'll drop a line down our equal sign, subtract the 4 from both sides since we're trying to get the x by itself. So we get 2x is 96. We divide through by 2, and x is equal to 48 degrees. If we look at the next example, notice there's a straight line in the picture, and these two angles actually create it. This is what we call a linear pair. We'll shorten it to LP. So in a linear pair, our setup is blank plus blank equals 180. So the two angles we have here are 115 and 5x. We'll drop a line down our equal sign. Since this is just a basic two-step equation, we'll subtract the 115. And that leaves us with 5x is equal to 65. Divide through by 5, and we get x is 13 degrees. In the last example on this row, notice we have the x set up, and we're talking about the opposite angles. So these are verticals. Verticals are equal to each other, so our setup is blank equals blank. 3x minus 35 is equal to 130 degrees. We'll add the 35 to both sides, and we'll get 3x equals 165. If we divide through by 3, so we're getting x by itself, we're going to end up with 55 degrees. Take a look at this next row. The first set are verticals. So our setup is going to be blank equals blank. The next set form a line, so they're a linear pair. So blank plus blank equals 180. The last one on this row is two angles that make a line, so again, these are a linear pair. Blank plus blank equals 180. I'm going to ask you to pause the video, see if you can actually set up the equations for these two, and then actually do them. All right, welcome back. On this first one, you set it up 5x equals 45, divide through, you get 9. On this one, you have the blank plus blank equals 180, you plug those two things in. You had to notice, though, that you had a plus 3 and a plus 77. So if you remember our solving equations little mantra of don't call me after midnight, you needed to combine like terms before you could add or subtract right on this one. So I added the 80 together and then subtracted that from both sides. On this last one, it's a little bit more complicated because there's a lot of combining like terms. Notice that both of the angles have some pieces here. So we have x plus 58 and we have x plus 21. So if you remember, x's are going to combine together, and then your 58, your plus 58, and your plus 21 are actually going to combine together. So you're going to end up with 2x plus 79 equals 180. Subtract the 79, and you get 2x equals 101. Divide through by 2, and x is 50.5 degrees. If you look at this last example down on the bottom, I see an x set up, and I notice that these two angles are across from each other, so we could actually use that as a vertical setup. So then verticals will be blank equals blank, so we'd have 2x plus 2 equals 130, subtract 2, 2x equals 128, divide through by 2, so x is 64 degrees. Now, we need to actually be able to solve for y as well, so we can either use the fact that I notice that y has a vertical angle, or we could realize that y could be a linear pair with the 130 as well. So, because we want to have a little variety here, let's do a linear pair. So blank plus blank equals 180. 3y minus 10 plus 130 is equal to 180. Combining my like terms here, I have a negative 10 and a plus 130. So I'm going to get 3y plus 120 equals 180. Subtract the 120, and 3y is equal to 60. Divide by 3, y then is 20 degrees. There's two more problems that show up here, and they talk about angles around a point. So you need to know that as you go around in a circle, you are actually completing 360 degrees. With that in mind, since these all go around and continue and complete a circle, we can actually take 360 degrees, taking away the 45, taking away the 75, and taking away the 160 to figure out that x is going to be equal to, grab our calculator, so 360 minus 45 will give us the 315, minus the 75 will give us the 240, minus the 160 will leave us with 80 degrees. If you look at this next example, same thing goes all the way around. So another way we can do this is we can first add up what's there. So 22 plus 73 plus 125 will give us 220 degrees. So then we could take 360 and take away that 220, and we're going to be left with 140 degrees for this X spot on the picture.